From the Smyth Radio Studios, it's Carrie and Brian Smith. This is Smyth Radio. You can tweet at Smyth Radio, SMYTH Radio. And now, your host, Carrie and Brian Smith.
So we got our special guest on.
Changing gears a little bit here.
I'm sorry. We'll get back into that a little bit later, but we've got our special guest on. We're talking about crowdfunding the border wall. And do you want to?
Yeah, the name of the company is American Border Foundation, and Quentin Kramer is going to be the spokesperson for this interview. And we have him on right now. Let's see if we can hear him. Is he?
Yep.
Oh, you can hear us? Okay.
Absolutely. Glad to meet you guys.
Good. We got good sound too. Good. All right. Well, welcome to the show. And I'm going to be honest with you. I had heard something about this a little while ago, and I haven't heard much since. But when I was asked to have an interview with you, I was like, oh yeah, I remember hearing about that. So you're going to have to brush us up on what's going on and get the word out to everybody about what's going on here.
Sure. So we actually initially became visible to the public last November, and we were sort of going through the process with the public in a sense. But effectively what happened is that we found a way that DHS could receive gifts from the public that could be tax deductible.
Wow.
And we could specify conditions so that we could actually say you can only use these funds to build the wall with.
So it's like a grant to the government.
Absolutely. It was almost like it was laid out directly for us. So we began to operationalize against that. The one thing is that the Office of General Counsel at DHS, so their lawyers, basically have to agree to our conditions. And the conditions have to be within the context of what the DHS's mission is, right? Of course, we couldn't say, go and do something in a foreign country, what have you. So we approached DHS in December of last year. And at the same time, we applied for nonprofit status, which we thought was going to go pretty quick. So you may have heard of us from as far back as that, December of last year, when we kind of came to the public and said, hey, here's what we found. Here's what we're getting ready to do. And we went ahead and did those things. Unfortunately, it took us until August of this year to get the IRS approval or the determination for nonprofit status. So we sort of sat around until then because, of course, we want the donations to be tax deductible.
Okay, so you want to make sure like the 501c3 status and all that goes through. So you just answered a massive question here, which was, how can we be so sure that you're not just going to be like that woman that raised $400,000 for that homeless guy and just run off and buy a Bentley with it or something like that? So it sounds to me like this is already set aside for, you said it was the DHS?
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's amazing.
That's who's responsible, ultimately, Customs and Border Patrol for actually building the wall. So they may contract to external contractors, or they might use the Army Corps of Engineers, we've seen in some recent print. But effectively, DHS is responsible for spending the money to build it.
Did you know this going in, that we had a way to bypass Congress by self-funding a government project?
Nope. I mean, to a certain extent, when I first bought this domain, fundthewall.com, it was many years ago, and we were thinking about crowdsourcing labor and materials and everything else. Once someone approached me, I kind of sat on it for a few years. Once someone approached me and said, hey, we should look at this, the first thing I did in terms of due diligence was to go and see, could we actually deliver the money? Obviously, it's a non-starter. If the only thing we could do was deliver to the General Treasury, to be quite honest, I felt like it was a non-starter because we want to make sure that the money can only be used for the wall.
Right now, Brian is trying to set up the. No, I'm not blasting on you. I'm just saying he's trying to set up the actual for everybody to see on the screen where they should go for this. Can you tell us? All I know is the handle for Build It Now, which is 3 underscores JUSTYCE and then 3 more underscores. So we actually had trouble finding it at one point because we thought it was 2 underscores, but it's at ___ JUSTYCE ____. And the name of it is Build It Now. And also the website is fundthewall.com. Is there another handle on Twitter or other places that they can go also?
Yep. So John's a volunteer with us right now, actually. So that's Justice. And so the actual Twitter handle is Fund That Wall.
Oh, okay.
Fund That Wall. And so that's the one that's officially, putting out information relative to nonprofit and the actual status of the project and so forth. So
that's
John's an architectural.
So that's why Fund That Wall might have been trending?
Yeah, I saw that before.
Yeah, it popped up the other day.
I was wondering.
Fund
I said, who's
That
putting
Wall?
fund that wall? Because I had seen Fund the Wall for a long time, but that makes sense now. So Fund That Wall, you can hashtag it when you're tweeting, and also you want to go to @FundThatWall to follow the proper Twitter handle in order to follow this. And also, so when you go to fundthewall.com, there's a link there for them to do the donations. And is there a maximum? Is there a maximum that somebody could donate?
No, the only requirement that we saw from DHS is that you can't be an employee of DHS and you can't be an employee of a contractor of DHS. So we do have that in our terms and conditions, and we do a basic check against that on the way in. But other than that, there really were no other requirements that we could see. Was
there pushback by them?
Well, so yes, I mean, and that's one of the things that we're talking about now and why we wanted to come on your show is that when we approached them in December, their Office of General Counsel came back and said, we're investigating and trying to figure out if we can take the money. And so then we heard back from them in about April or so, and we were still waiting for the IRS, and they sort of came back, and we never heard their questions. They just said, please keep waiting. And then in July, they came back to us and said, we don't have the resources to accept, what did they say? We don't have the resources to process external donations. That was the language that they used.
Come on, man! but you got the ability to collude with Christopher Steele and Russia, but you can't take money.
Oh yeah, right. It's amazing. The thing is you're saying that the process of crowdfunding a government project, has that always been available? Always? And yet they don't have the system set up to be able to do something like that. Now,
well, and we think this is the point of it to a certain extent. We could make a market for the idea that you can donate directly to DHS and attach conditions. And we could send all of America individually to DHS to get them to agree individually the conditions with each person. So all we did is simplify that, right, and wrap a nonprofit around it and say, on behalf of America, we want to negotiate this once with you and say, here, take the money for the border wall.
It's literally
check once a week, once a month. All you have to do is stamp it on the back and take it to the bank.
Yeah, it's literally collective bargaining on behalf of the American people who want a wall built against DHS, who's going to actually receive the money. It's funny that it's almost like they're fighting having to take the money because then they'll have to do something with it. And so bypassing Congress, I really love this idea. And of course, I was extremely skeptical at first. And like everybody listening will be like, wait, whoa. What are they going to do with this money? But now once that money comes through, can you tell me what platform is accepting the money? Is that like PayPal, or do you have your own? How's that coming in?
We accept PayPal, and we can take credit cards. And of course, you can mail a check, which is going to avoid any fees from any credit card processor or anything like that.
Awesome.
And then we'll take that money straight into DHS. So it's just accumulating in a bank account right now.
Is there a goal for the amount that you need?
Well, so when we put up the original goal in November of last year, and it sort of looks funny because when you look at the site, it says we've been collecting since November of last year, but really not as a nonprofit, not with the ability to deliver to DHS. That goal is, I think, 1.25 or 1.5 billion, which we figured was just an incremental step. What we've seen recently is that there's a particular project in the Rio Grande Valley that we saw news about a week ago or a week and a half ago that the Army Corps of Engineers may want to build that or may be contracted to build that. And there's a price tag of about $450 million on that. So we think that we'll probably reset a new goal and go to fund against that particular construction project that's discreetly identified. And then that money may go to the Corps of Engineers or may go to whatever contractor DHS picks.
How sure are you that they aren't going to be able to find a loophole to just totally take that money and do something else with it?
It's possibly true, and we'll want to make sure that as we make the first delivery that we're tracking through that. And we feel like to the extent that we've provided any funds to DHS, this organization in particular has a responsibility to make sure that it's being used on that which we've told them to. And so we expect that we'll provide service in the future that we'll be able to see on a potentially mile-by-mile basis how they're doing against the budget that they proposed, how they're doing against any construction timelines that they've told us that they were going to follow, and ultimately how the outcome of the construction is in terms of securing that section of the border.
How detailed are the stipulations you gave them? Like, what if they just do a chain link fence, or does it have to be made out of certain materials? Does it have to be a certain height? Does it have to have electric concertina wire on top?
We said for border wall construction, we want it to be very loose. It has to be a physical wall because the IRS requirement is for a public work or building or construction. And so we don't think yet that a border system, quote unquote, that involves technology necessarily falls under that, although we'll cover that in the future.
Does repairing of the current border fall into that? Because we were told that they are currently repairing and surveying new land, but currently repairing wall now. Right.
And there are two different scenarios. So from that standpoint, we definitely want to get those existing places repaired. We want to get new construction done. And we've seen, I think there was about $1.5 billion allocated, if I recall, earlier in the year that was used for new construction in New Mexico. But that was against old models. So it wasn't the 30-foot high prototypes that we've seen. And in fact, I think that all of those prototypes ultimately have issues that would create problems with long-term construction with those, or big, or I should say large-scale construction, where they can't handle big slopes and they have other problems. I'm not sure that any of those 8 will necessarily move forward.
Now, the one that I know Trump liked, and the one that I agreed with him, I liked it too, is the one that's it's got the gaps between it. It's like the steel poles with the gaps between it so you can see through the wall. Mm-hmm. I don't know. It kind of seemed like it might work pretty well, but you're saying that there might be engineering impossibilities.
Well, the USA Today actually has done a good set of articles over the last few weeks that went into detail in particular about the outcome of those prototypes. And what I found interesting over the last year is that we never really saw a successful award from those contracts. I never saw any article that said this particular vendor won. And what they found is that every single model had a problem with slopes above, I think, 30%. And every single one had different construction issues that would have caused problems, again, over large segments of construction. So I think that may end up being rebid, or maybe the Army Corps of Engineers has some other ideas, or maybe they blend everything into one supermodel that works better than all of them individually did.
What happens to the money if, and this is obviously, here's the what if scenarios, right. You raise $1 billion and you give it to them, and then completely separately, Congress passes a bill and it gets passed that it gets funded. What happens to that money then?
Well, so there's two scenarios. One would be what we've heard even in the last week is that potentially Congress is going to allocate $5 billion this cycle. And so that would certainly change things for us. And the American Border Foundation itself may not need to crowdfund much of anything. Instead, we would go directly into that oversight mode of making sure that whatever money they've gotten from whatever source is being spent well, and then some of the other things that we have as a mission. But I think even if they got $5 billion, there would potentially be another $20 billion behind that would still be needed over the next few years. And so if we had delivered a big chunk of money, then that could still be used in conjunction with whatever Congress did allocate. And hopefully we'll just accelerate the time frame then.
Right.
And bring the time to which it takes us to get it to, control forward.
Yeah, and in that case, the stipulations would have to change too, because maybe they allocate real money to do a majority of the construction, and then there might be additional things that you weren't even planning on that the money could go towards at that point. So
absolutely. To your point about being able to crowdfund government services, we think it's a great opportunity to be able to explore what are the limits here and what can we potentially fund and not fund. I mean, I don't know if it would be appropriate to go say, let's give all the CBP agents bonuses, but potentially that would be within the realm of what.
You said construction. Does that count as construction?
It counts as securing the border.
Okay.
And ultimately, it is charitable to secure the border because all Americans benefit from that, and it improves the welfare of the people at large.
Right. And think about this, folks. I mean, we elect politicians to go up to Capitol Hill, up to D.C., to do our bidding, if you will. And they're not doing our bidding. And we all know this. We all complain about this. And that's why Trump was elected, the wrecking ball that he is. And that's why we elected him to wreck it and to bring it down. But now you're saying there's an avenue where we can direct fund, and if politicians see that there's that much money coming from the people, from a private entity on a direct fund, I can't help but think that the greedy politicians wouldn't back it. Want to get behind it and say, oh, okay, I see you're speaking loud and clear, because we're screaming we want the wall.
We need to put our money where our mouth is.
Right.
There you go. So have you done the math and figured out how much people have to contribute to get to your goal?
Well, the mind tends to go straight to the number of people that voted for President Trump. And so you would say those are the people that would probably be inclined to support this. There's about 63.5 million, I think, of those. Mm-hmm. So roughly that would be about $394 per voter if it were $25 billion that we had to go to. And of course, that could be over 5 years.
That's not that much.
Well, there's going to be people that are going to have some sticker shock on that, but the thing is, I mean, that's the way we got to get what we got to get, you know. And
it's not only individuals though; businesses can donate.
Yeah, businesses will probably, so an individual like just Brian and I, we wouldn't maybe need to put a check for $350 if the company right down the street here puts a check in for $25,000.
Right. So if you send $20 as an individual person, or $10 or whatever,
and maybe put some on it later on,
whatever it be. You never know. If this thing starts going, I'm
Right.
sure there's corporations and companies that would want to get behind it.
Well, especially since it sounds legitimate and it's tax deductible, there's going to be companies that might actually benefit from donating to this.
And those companies down there close to the border might benefit.
Right. Do you know, have you guys ever put any stipulations on engineering things such as, I always look at the border, study it carefully, and I notice, okay, between the Pacific Ocean and the Rio Grande, we need a pretty substantial physical border. You get to the Rio Grande and it's like, okay, well, you have a natural barriers. Is there any kind of detail in that kind of stuff? I honestly feel like you almost may not even need a wall per se at the river, maybe, but it would be different as opposed to just a piece of desert on either side. Mexico has desert, America has desert, in between's desert. You need a big physical wall there. So have you guys thought of those kind of considerations?
Well, we hope we can unite America around a concept of operational control of the border, and that's what the Secure Fence Act stipulates. And so that says effectively that 100% of everything is stopped, whether it's crossers, contraband, whatever it is, it gets stopped. And so that to me doesn't necessarily mean a wall from coast to coast. It means whatever you need to stop 100% of contraband and crossers, we'll give that to you. It could be technology, it could be more CBP agents, and in many cases, it's going to be a wall. And so to me, that needs to be evaluated on a mile-by-mile basis. What's the right thing to do for this mile to obtain operational control?
Now, there's a lady on Twitter, and I can't check it right now because my computer is occupied.
Oh, sorry.
But
I could look.
She tweeted out and periscoped going down to the border. She went down to the border near the Rio Grande, like you were saying, and there currently is. It's a pretty nice looking wall, but it's an older one. Concrete, maybe about 15 to 20 foot high, and then some steel sticking up that you can see through higher than that. But she went down there and took a walk down to the Rio Grande, and apparently we have already built huge. It's a huge steep cliff of rocks from our side of the Rio Grande. I mean, it was enormous. It's all loose rock, and the DHS guy was telling her it's because of erosion or whatnot. And she kept insinuating, well, it looks like it's a massive cliff, and it was. So, I mean, there's multiple layers that are being put in play, if you will.
You would need a 30-foot wall on top of a cliff.
No.
Probably
Right.
Not, probably
so, awesome. Well, it's so I implore everybody to go to this fundthewall.com and follow @fundthatwall on Twitter. Any other places they should be following, or is the Twitter a main point of it? And
we tend to mainly put message out on Twitter, Facebook as well. Fund the Wall on Facebook.
All right, follow them with the bell, right, or is it the check or whatever? So that way you can get all the information from them, and please donate to them. And this is Quentin Kramer of the American Border Foundation, and we thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you very much for having me. It was great to meet you.
All right, thank you.
Take care.
Awesome. So
that was super cool, man.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so happy that this. I had no idea. I had no idea that. Hi, Brian. We got the double going. All right, so
little inside ball game for you folks
yeah,
on
you guys
video.
got to see the other side. So anyway, I think it's awesome that first of all, not only can we all know we can crowdsource whatever, but to know that the government actually had something set up to do that. I'm whoever the government official was that said we should do that. I mean, it had to happen. Somebody had to say we should allow for that. That's brilliant. That is just so brilliant. And then for them to find out that it can be done, there is a legal way to do that, and to make it tax deductible, and we have the technology to get everybody to quickly contribute to that. I think that is so awesome. And I actually heard that argument way back during it was probably before the election. If it wasn't before, it was very shortly after, where somebody was like, man, forget Congress. They're just a bunch of do nothing, no good,
People
whatever.
were selling bricks.
They were
Remember
selling
that?
bricks
Yeah.
and just trying to do whatever. But this is actually the right way to do it. And now, after already hearing, you know what? If every single Trump supporter that voted for Trump just donated X amount of dollars, we'd have enough to build the whole wall. Well, this is it. This is it right here. This is the time to go ahead and put to it. And go to fundthewall.com and click on it. Get the paperwork so that if you are a business or whatever, you would like to make it tax deductible, it's all there. Brian knows how that works, right? You get when you make a tax deductible donation as a business, you gotta save the paperwork. So when you file for your IRS and all that, so if you own a business, you know what to do.
Yeah, give it to your accountant.
Yeah, give it to there you go. That's how you do it.
Forget about it.